see your mother. You were only given one, go see your mother. And you know that you will never have another. Go see your mother, go see your mom.
Welcome to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. I'm your host, Sadia. And this is my mother, Ima. Hey, Ima.
Hey, sweetheart. Tu bishvat. Tu. Thank you.
Do you remember how you celebrated when you were a kid?
When I was a kid, it was one of these things where we heard about it in Hebrew school. I think they passed out dates and figs or something. But I've noticed the variety of Shechianu fruits has gotten, over the years, much more exotic.
Oh, yeah.
When I was a kid, it was Buxer and maybe dates, Buxer, figs. Now it's like, wow. I mean, I got lychee nuts. I got Mexican guavas. People getting jackfruit and like all these exotic, weird star fruit. Never heard of these when I was a kid. Chabad.org had a very interesting lecture on the history of the observance of Tu B'Shvat. I don't know if you read it, or if you read it, or if you heard it.
I might have.
But evidently, Tu B'Shvat observance is fairly recent as far as Jewish history goes. It's really only been since maybe the later part of the 19th century, if that really, maybe more into the 20th century.
Yeah, they were talking about that. I mean, here's the thing. It's not that it's never been observed. It's just that the observance was always very minimal and very simplistic, and it's gotten more elaborative. And I think that's what they're talking about, because I noticed when I was a kid, Tu B'Shvat, you don't say Tachanun, you have maybe a new fruit or whatnot. Like, I should have got what I did this year. Looking back, I maybe should have been a little more elaborate, but I got some dried mango, some dried pineapple, some dried kiwi, and we just had some of that. That was it. The reason why I thought that is because a lot of times on Tu B'Shvat, I'd get like this big thing of dates or this big things of pomegranates or whatever, and they would just sit in my fridge after like a nibble and then eventually throw out. So I'm like, I'm tired of that. I'd rather get something that I know will be consumed, I know will be eaten, and I don't have to feel like I'm pushing, trying to eat dates for the next 2 years. I've had these dates in my cupboard. You know what I mean?
Well, according to this documentary, what happened was what brought, Tu B'Shvat is not mentioned at all, in the Chumash. It's mostly mentioned in Mishnayos and Gemara, but there was discovered a couple of things that happened in the late 19th century. There was discovered a letter from Rebbe Gershon to a Jewish community that in his time, I guess, I don't know when he lived, like, what's it, during the 1000s, something like that, Rebbe Gershon.
Like a check.
Yeah. So this community wanted to declare a fast day on Tu B'Shvat. I don't know for whatever reason. Rebbe Gershon told them no, that they shouldn't, that Tu B'Shvat is supposed to be a happy yontif, happy occasion, a happy, propitious day, and that we don't say tachanun, we don't fast. Then he quoted them. Also, there were some poems that were found written by Yehuda Halevi that were discovered also in the late 19th century, also commemorating Tu B'Shvat. But I've noticed that for myself personally, finding or buying more exotic fruits has become more necessary, because fruits, I guess for me and for many people, fruits that many years ago would have been considered like Shechianu fruits are becoming mundane, like almost every day, like your dried mango. Do you see dried mangoes? I mean, you see people eating dried mangoes almost every day, buying them in the store. Dates are everywhere. Dates are, figs too. Pomegranates, I see pomegranates everywhere.
I mean, that's where I was kind of stuck, because I had star fruit the other day. I was sitting at a table somewhere, I forgot where, and it was just like a fruit platter, and it's star fruit there. It had grapes and whatnot. So I'm like, it's not even Tu B'Shvat yet. I had a star fruit. I'm like, looking back, I'm like, I had all these like technically Shechianu type fruits already. So it's kind of like how that thing. there's interesting correlation between Tu B'Shvat and Tu B'Av, that they're exactly 6 months apart, and about the importance of New Year for rebirth, and why trees and plants and whatnot, why it's such a big deal, because plants are the only living creature that needs a constant source, from the ground. You could correlate it to the idea that God's always, giving us the source from Hashem. I actually wanted to talk about an interesting topic today. So on our family chat, we talked about the idea of what's more important, your marriage, or starting a marriage, or starting a career. And some people were saying and commenting that career is probably more important or more of a priority than trying to start a marriage. And I know your take was more of the importance of having a marriage, but I'll do the flip side of.
No, actually, did you hear my comment?
Oh, maybe
Yeah, did you see my comment? My comment was that I felt that career is, I think they're both very important. I think career is important because I said I've seen many situations of women who totally gave themselves over, gave up their careers, totally gave themselves over to their husbands and their family, and were the perfect wives or mothers, whatever. And their husbands, after their husbands succeeded in their careers, they turned around. It's like they quote unquote grew out of their wives, and they turned around and divorced them. And these women, because they didn't have a career, were totally financially left in the lurch.
Sorry.
I've seen a lot of cases of that.
I'll be honest with you. I read everything earlier today. I've been going through a lot of stuff, like nothing crazy, just like a lot of like busy stuff. So I've just been forgetting and mixing things up. So
I think they're both I think they're both very important. There's no guarantees in life, and not just divorce, God forbid, but women whose husbands have died very, very suddenly in accidents or an unforeseen, like a sudden disease that came out of nowhere, and they also were, and if they didn't have a career to fall back on, or to like a parnasa, some sort of, trade or career or training, they were also pretty, they're also very, very, very serious circumstances, not being able to provide for themselves.
Well, again, that's why it's again, I had this whole thing worked in my head, and all of a sudden I realized that like it was the flip side. One thing I can say is I agree, because having that obviously your why am I losing the word? But basically having that.
Maybe my senior moments are contagious.
Yes.
By the way, you're the second young person I've run into this week who was having trouble with recall.
Yeah.
And I had to remind them of the word. I mean, it's supposed to be called a senior moment, but both these people were in their 30s.
Yeah, that's pretty much what's going down.
Maybe it's something in the air.
No, it basically, what I'm saying is that it's important to have a safety net. It's important to have a set amount of tools in your back pocket, that in case anything goes down and you need to be some kind of service to others, to make money, to survive, you better have something very durable with you. And that's kind of why I got into architecture and construction and whatnot, because I felt that there was a very practical side of just knowing how to create shelter and knowing how to create buildings. Architecture turned more into just an art form and an aesthetic form, and maybe some contract, maybe like some legal knowledge. But it's interesting because with architecture, a lot of people complain about the issues they have with the lack of monetary gain, and the frustrations of how architect in general has been like comped by like other people and other careers. Looking back, it's just like the real nuts and bolts of a lot of this stuff is construction. The architecture is just, there's very, I don't want to get too far into it, but it's an interesting discovery. But the other thing that was mentioned was talking about not the standards for marriage, but when going on the shidduch dating, to have the core value focus. And I was going to ask you, do you remember your core values of what you wanted out of somebody when you were starting that shidduch dating scene?
Mm. Oh, good question. Core value. Well, the core value is basically, us, Chabad, because that meant a lot to me. But the things that the young men that I was being introduced to were all we're all Chabad Hasidim. So it's like, our core values were pretty much aligned up.
So basically, it's your
A man who wanted, like, say, man who wanted like a large family. Um, Ironically, I didn't want somebody though who was going to learn while I worked.
interesting.
I didn't think that would work. I didn't think that was practical, especially in this day and age when you're expected. It's not like, years ago you had families that supported the young couple while the young man, you know, worked, learned, and usually the wife ran a family business. But being from our background, we had to basically pull our own weight. So I wanted a man who was going to, and I thought, like, as far as being a shaliach was concerned, the young men I met, I didn't meet anybody who really wanted to be a shaliach. It's not that I was looking for someone who did not want to be a shaliach. It just turned out that way. And met some interesting people. One of the guys I was introduced to, I went out to a couple times, would you believe was a detective for the police department.
Oh wow.
And he like had this, he had his eyes, he looked like a detective. His eyes were like these real penetrating little narrow eyes.
Dragnet.
And he was always going like, he had a black beard, and he had black dark features, black beard. He was like, going like this.
Cute.
But he really fit the role of Sherlock Holmes.
Did he smoke a pipe and have that really funny hat? Did any of your core values change over time when you were dating?
That's a good question. Not really. I was one of these people though that I knew I had to be physically attracted to whoever I married, that I had to find him handsome. That I couldn't it's really sad. I came across, there were some friends of mine who felt that physical attraction was not particularly necessary. They were looking, one girl in particular, that she was looking for a guy who would give her a lot of stability, who had a good steady job and would be like a steady grounded family person, because it was very sad. She came from a very dysfunctional family. She lost her mother at a young age. I think her mother was killed in a traffic accident. She was pretty young, and her father really, it was hard for him to keep the kids together in a stable home. It was a very interesting story with her. What happened was they had a next door neighbor who was a religious Christian. And I think the woman did this out of the goodness of her heart, not realizing that, this is a Jewish family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so in her mind, here she sees these poor kids with, just lost their mother, whose father is working and really can't manage the house with the kids. And so she kind of like took the kids like under her wing, and she helped them. She made sure they had dinner, they had this, they had that. And she also took them to church.
Oh, I see.
And so this friend of mine for a long time was actually involved in Christianity.
Interesting.
And when she hit her, I think her early 20s was when she realized, hey, this really isn't me. and she became a Balas Tshuva.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense where they're just some people they have good intentions. They really try their best, and it just can be translated wrong. Like you hear stories of people at different places trying to get stuff done, and there's like that typical miscommunication, and someone flies off the handle, and all I had to take was like a simple conversation to realize that that's not the case.
We had a podcast like that before about people overreacting to innocent little things that you've said because they've got baggage from their past that, of course, that you're not responsible for and you don't know anything about. But
Yeah, they got their own.
You unfortunately, in your own in an innocent way, you struck the wrong chord.
Yep, that's happened to
Without
me a couple of times.
meaning.
You're like, I'm just trying to do my job. Don't worry, please. Yeah.
It's like people in the store when the prices get. I remember working behind the deli counter and the prices started to go up in the 70s, and people yelling at me about how expensive things were. I go, I'm just the cart behind the counter.
Don't kill the messenger.
The prices.
Oh gosh. Yeah. So you're it's interesting because you were talking about stability and you didn't really think about that when you were looking to date. You didn't think maybe with your background, with your father and your experience, you didn't think of wanting stability like that?
Yeah, I wanted a man who had direction, was was not the type to sit back and do nothing. I mean, it didn't have to be a big college degree or something. It could have been even a trade, but something stable. And your father at the time was going to pharmacy school.
So you thought you were going to get some kind of doctor guy. Boy, were you surprised. Oh God. What was your reaction to that?
I told him, he wrote me a letter saying, because he saw that he looked like he was not doing well. And he says, if I fail at a pharmacy school, do you still want to marry me? And that's when we were engaged. And I said to him, of course I do. I said, I'm not marrying you for whatever profession you are. I'm marrying you for yourself, for who you are as a human being.
So my question then is, how much do you regret that?
The proof is in the pudding. Look what fantastic people you guys turned out to be.
Oh, wow. You sure sound confident in that statement. Okay. All right. Sure. Okay. So it's interesting because I've watched a few of these dating reels on Instagram and whatnot, and they talk about what do women want, and it's something very similar to what you're saying, where there's that they want someone who's stable, who's going up. They want to move up, and this one woman was talking about how they don't want to date any broke men. And what she means by broke men is somebody who's just not moving up. They could be rich, they can be settled, they can be a trust fund, whatever, but have something to move forward to. Don't be somebody who's not willing to go ahead and just try and move forward and do things. It's kind of remember, because you're jogging in my memory. When remember as a kid, I once time asked you, why did you marry Tati? And you told me, because he always tried. And I think that's what you mean, is that you just trying. Can you elaborate on that, please? Because I have an idea of what I think what you mean, but I want you to.
When he was unemployed, he didn't just sit back and do nothing. He went out there and applied for jobs and went for interviews. And in the meantime, and until he got a stable job, he worked all these. How can I say it? He worked all these jobs, he put his name in with Badakashris, OU Laboratories, OK Laboratories, and he became a Mishgiach, and he worked at he went out. They were very, very happy to have a Mishgiach who was in the Maryland area, because a lot of the men who were working in Mashiachim lived in New York, and they often didn't like the idea of driving out to a job to supervise a factory that was in all the way in Pennsylvania, all the way in Virginia, and like, having to maybe drive 6 to 8 hours, or maybe even having to sleep overnight somewhere. So your father being in more of a central area, Maryland, he could go to Virginia and see a Chav Yisrael farm or a factory, whatever, and do it in just one day, just by, maybe have like a 3-4 hour drive. And it was much easier. He became a shgiach and went to all these different factories. One factory he went to was the chocolate factory.
Oh yeah, I remember you telling me the story about that chocolate factory. You wanted to go trafe as well and bribe him. And he said no, thank you. And then he got sprayed with a fire extinguisher.
Yes.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it was the policy of the factory. I went there one day to help them out. They needed some help. So I went there to help to work on the assembly line. And the wife, of the was a couple, was a family business. I said to her, I had to basically box the little pieces of chocolate that were coming out of, on the conveyor belt of the machine. And I said to her, what if the pieces are like kind of crushed, not perfect? She smiled and she says, just eat it or take it home. They
That's
couldn't
awesome.
box anything that wasn't perfect. And a lot of the women that worked on the assembly line had these aprons with big pockets.
Oh, that's funny.
Needless to say, I gained 25 pounds on that job.
Oh gosh, do you remember the I Love Lucy chocolate factory thing? So yeah. So
It was kind of far fetched, but not too far from the truth.
they're just munching. So thing is also, it's just because we were talking about standards, we were talking about whether they changed or not. And maybe if you think that the standards for marriage have changed over the years, or they've kind of stayed the same?
It's a very good question. I don't know. But I think as far as like women go,
They're all the same.
no, it's changed in that in my day, I think you had a lot of men that felt threatened by very intelligent, assertive, career-minded women. There was, under my mother's generation and partially in my generation, there was this idea of the career woman who only wanted her career and did not want to get married. And I remember when I was in Crown Heights, there was this very attractive, intelligent woman in her 30s who was a top executive with, I forgot, one of the big corporations there, who became a Baal Tshuva. And of course, she was having a hard time finding a shidduch. And so this friend of mine who was in her 50s says to me, Zalka, it's not good for a girl to be too smart. Oh my God.
What's funny is I've heard really messed up things from stories from people that have had shadchanim and what the shadchanim have said to them over the years. Have you experienced any of that when you were dating? Just the what the heck are you talking about moments? Either you need to lose a couple of pounds, or that person's not for you because you're just not smart enough for them, or anything of the sort?
That's a good question. Crazy things that shadchanim say.
Yeah, because I've heard some stories where people are just getting fed up and they're done with the shadchanim, or at least wanting some kind of shidduch certificate where there's some kind of classes they should go to because of the lack of care they have with how they talk to people.
I was thinking about. I just had an idea. One shadchan, one shadchan I went to. Well, I always gave a very much of a younger appearance, especially when I was in my 20s. People thought when I was in my 20s, there were people who thought I was 14 years old.
That's funny.
And in fact, when I was traveling in Israel, this woman says to me, "Are your parents letting you travel by yourself?" And I say, "Ma'am, I'm 22 years old." And she goes, "I thought you were 14." So,
then you had some guys hitting on you.
There was a shadchan I went to one time, and she looks at me. She goes, "I don't know, honey. You look very, very young to want to start dating." I said to her, "I'm 24 years old." She goes, "Oh, I thought like 15."
That's funny.
There was one shotgun, though, one woman who, this woman wanted to make a shidduch with me with somebody. And so somebody called this woman who she thought knew me, who really didn't know me that well. And the woman told her that, I don't know about her. She's kind of messed up in the head. I was very upset when I heard that. And this friend of mine called her and yelled at her. She goes, what? She goes, who are you to say such a thing? She goes, it's just an introduction. Introduce her to the guy and then let them decide. What who are you to stop a shidduch? I went out with the guy. It didn't, he wasn't for me.
Why wasn't he for you?
You go out with some of these people and
Yeah,
you just know this is way, way in left field. Well, there was this one guy I went out with one time. I don't know how old he was. He was Hungarian. He looked like I don't know if he was young or not, but he looked like he was in his 40s, like middle-aged and balding.
Ooh.
And he might have been a young guy who just happened to age, more. But it was the minute I laid my eyes on him, I know, oh no, this is just, it's not.
Because life beat him down. You want something that's more positive.
This was just, this guy was just not for me. There have been, there have been cases. I'm trying to think how to put this politely. Hey, I mean, there have been cases. One of your siblings was subjected to mistaken identity. Remember where somebody, when they mentioned his name to this one shotgunner, she thought they were talking about somebody else.
Yeah.
She totally mixed him up with somebody
and
else.
Blackballed him for a while.
And he was very upset. And finally, somebody got a hold of the shotgunner and said, "What are you doing, saying such horrible things about this very fine young man?"
Yeah.
And she asked him asked this other person a few questions. Well, isn't he this? Isn't he that? Doesn't he go, no. And she realized she had totally mixed him up with somebody else.
Yeah. What's funny was this isn't shidduch, but this was kind of funny related, where I remember I was trying to get into a camp. I think I mentioned this before in another podcast a while ago, but I was trying to get into another camp, into this camp as a counselor. And they asked me for like, send in your application, yada yada. And they did it through fax. And I always got confused between the front or the back.
I know.
And I accidentally sent the back, which was some other person's number of someone I was trying to talk to hopefully be a reference, but I didn't call them yet. I didn't clarify. I wrote the number down on the back of the application. I sent the fax in. All they got was the number. They called the person to see what that number is. And the guy just destroyed me. He said this guy just complained. He's not very good, not very organized, yada, yada. Just totally whatever. So I never got in, but it was probably meant to be anyways, because looking back, I mean, I don't want to deal with that. And throwback from last week or 2 weeks ago about camping. I just didn't care in the first place. I was just doing it because my father and sister said I should do it. It's the right thing to do, and just go ahead and look for a job at a camp. Like, I just want to stay home and hang out with my friends. No, don't do it. Don't go to camp. So whatever. Long story short, I listened to the people that I shouldn't have listened to in the first place. Maybe thinking on my own was a better idea than just depending on other people's opinions. But that's for a later story, I guess.
Now that make an interesting podcast, but depending on other people's opinions.
Yeah, well, we have about 8 minutes of it. You could talk about it. That's a good 8-minute filler. How many times were you always someone? I'll reframe the question so it's easier to chew on. Were you ever given the feeling that you should listen to people first before thinking of yourself or your own personal opinion about a situation?
Yeah, I do. I do that all the time. As a matter of fact,
you fish for it.
One of your siblings was a little upset that she feels I do it too much. That I should make up my mind and then just go forward with it and say, hey, this is what I'm doing.
Like, maybe stop fishing for it. Because that's the other thing, is that it's a learned behavior, and I got it from my parents. It's a natural thing. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying the obvious. And I learned over time that it wasn't something that I should be doing, because I got...
Well, listen,
Well, I'll tell you why. Well, I'll tell you why I shouldn't be doing it, and you could counteract it.
Okay.
The reason why is because if it doesn't go my way, it's someone else's fault. and and I just really regret that. Like, I get really upset about it. If it goes my way, I feel like it wasn't even me that decided this decision. It was somebody else. I couldn't own it. And once I started doing my own decisions, whether it was a mistake or whether it was right, I felt more in control of my life. I felt more happy with myself. Like, if I never got into architecture or didn't go into become a counselor or did whatever, but did what I wanted to do, whether it was right or wrong, I would feel more happy about myself and about my life choices because at least they were mine. I could own. And I think that's the point I was trying to make and let you know.
Well, there's nothing wrong in, if you want to make a serious decision, of going to people who might have more experience, more knowledge than you, and getting their opinion and like getting maybe a consensus together. I mean, people, CEOs of companies will do that. They have advisors, they have researchers, they will have a whole crew to see, to get data, to get opinions, to get, and base their final decision on what the people around them, their advisors or subordinates, advise them to do.
But if I'm not,
there's nothing wrong with doing that.
well, I'll have to counter with that because I remember listening to, was it YY Jacobson or was it oh, it was the Chabad.org rabbi that does Chitas, Robert Gordon, was mentioning the idea of what a true leader is. And a true leader makes the decision whether something is good for the people, whether the people like it or not. And someone who's constantly polling and figuring out what do people want, it doesn't necessarily make it leadership. It's not a leadership quality.
Of
And
course
what I
not,
want,
but
I just want to finish the sentence and finish the concept, and then you can continue. I love your back and forth, but I just want to finish this one piece. The point I'm trying to make is, when you're trying to lead yourself, at some point you have to make decisions for yourself, whether people like it or not, because it's what you feel that you need to do. Obsessing over what other people say, or even looking at these CEOs that hire these advisors, they don't ask these advisors on every single thing. They hire them and ask them on very important things. So just how easy it is to say, what do I need to do today? Well, I need to daven, I need to get up, I need to wash, I need to put on my clothes. That mentality should also go with other bigger decisions as well, and feel confident with your decisions and deal with it with the way it lays. Now, your rebuttal.
okay, there's a big difference between basing your decisions on quote unquote what people want and basing your decisions on actual fact and actual knowledge that somebody might have, or expertise. Like I tell you, when it comes to planning trips, sometimes I'm not exactly talented in that area. And like, I look back at, like, when I went to your brother's wedding, it was a nace that I got there. It was a nace. And I should have listened to one of the family members who looked at me and said, why don't you just take Air Canada directly from, like, Fort Lauderdale, which is what I should have done. But what happened was, I had $100 credit with, I think it was Delta, wherever, I went, and I didn't want to lose my $100. I should have just said, forget it, it's not worth it. And I should have taken that person's advice and taken the direct flight from Fort Lauderdale. It would have saved me a lot of SARS. And the family too, when I get there without my luggage. Saj? Your audio is off.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah. So it's it's a weird thing. So it's a learned behavior or a lesson of air travel, that it's better to fly direct than to fly, one way or the other. And sometimes saving a couple of bucks is just going to shoot you in the foot in the long run. And I think that's something that I kind of learned, obviously, when we're going to be traveling, God willing, this Pesach, where it's just like, I'm not going to go ahead and fly Spirit and have a 7-hour layover in Atlanta, Georgia, when I just need to go ahead and just get in, and that's it. Like, this isn't happening. And but you know what? End of the day, yes, you shoulda, coulda, shoulda, coulda, woulda, but it was your decision, and that was okay. That
Hmm.
was your decision.
Yeah, no matter
Yeah,
how stupid it was.
but that's the thing.
It's my decision. It might be stupid, but
exactly, and I feel like some people like
so what? I almost didn't make the flight, the connecting flight. So what? My luggage was back in West Palm.
shoulda, coulda, woulda, but it's just but making your own decisions is more freeing than depending on other people. Whether it's something that I kind of learned over the time, because by the time I was in my 20s, early 20s, I had this whole thing where I was just like, I needed someone's approval. I needed somebody in the family's approval to tell me what to do and to explain, oh, I need to do this, that, and the other. And it just got to a point where I'm just like, I need to be a grown man and make my own decisions. And if it seems to be a stupid decision, I will cross that bridge and learn my lesson. And that's okay. And I did. And I feel more happy for it. Do I look back and regret it every single day? It's my decision. So I feel connected to it. We're like, okay, this is at least mine, because I learned a
Yes.
lot from it and I grew from it.
Embrace the stupidity.
It's okay to be stupid. Just learn your lessons quick. I think that's really how it goes. What do you think we should call this episode?
Embracing stupidity.
Embracing stupidity. Okay. All right. Sounds good to me. All right. Sounds like a plan.
Yes,
Sounds
make it part of your identity. Be proud of it.
Embracing stupidity. All right.
Let's have a month dedicated to embracing stupidity and being proud of it.
Proudly stupid. Proudly stupid. Thank you for listening to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. Please comment and subscribe on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, and Instagram. I would greatly appreciate it, and my mother would too.